Okay, hello everybody. Hello Michael and Eleanor. We don't have that many people joining the session. We'll give it another couple of minutes and see how we get on. If it is a relatively small number, then what we can do is personalize it more. So you're welcome to ask as many questions as you like, and we can be flexible on what we discuss. But I can see one other person is joining, so we'll just give them a chance to join.
Lorna?
Yep.
I wasn't going to stay very long myself.
Okay.
So
I think
can't. Where do I see who's here? Is it just 3 of us? Is that what you're saying?
so there's one person joining. But other than that, if you take out the moderators, yes, we've got Eleanor and now Alex joining. What we could do is, I know Eleanor's got to go early as well. I mean, we should maybe ask you guys what you're wanting from the session. If it's easier to have a question and answer initially, then we can do that.
I need absolutely to be gone by 10, but I'm happy for you to do what's best. I've been through this process a few times, but not been successful a few times. It's more the tips and the must-haves that I really want to double check.
Okay. Well,
I don't know about
Alex,
the others.
Welcome, Alex. I was just saying that we have a relatively small number of people today, and so I'm trying to make sure that we do the right thing. We don't want to spend, 3 hours of us plowing through slides that aren't relevant for people. So, I don't know if you maybe wanted to say what your interests are here.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'd agree with the last comment that the tips would be kind of the most useful part. And yeah, I think I did have one specific question, but apart from that, yeah, mainly tips.
Okay.
So, I mean, one thing we could do is, I guess we've got the forms.
Do you want to come? Can't quite see you. Sorry. So we could go through. We could put up the forms, and then we could ask for any. We could give you some tips and hints, and you could ask questions related to the forms.
Yeah, because I've got a slide with a couple of sort of broad kind of tips and things on. So maybe if we did forms and then tips, and then we can just answer questions, that might work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe the simplest thing, Alex, did you have a specific question? Do you want to ask it first?
Yeah, sure. So it was just about the structure of the people working on the proposal. So what we have in mind is someone from Imperial College as a co-investigator, and myself working at the University of Manchester. But there's a specific technical staff member which would be really quite suited to the project, but they're based in STFC. So we've got this kind of freeway collaboration, I guess. My specific question was if that kind of structure is okay, or if we need like a co-investigator at STFC as well.
No,
that's that. I mean, that kind of structure is quite common actually. We've got quite a few projects where we would have the PI in one place, we might have co-I somewhere else, and then we've got the technical staff in some cases actually at STFC, but other places as well. So that's all absolutely fine. And as long as the STFC person has the local support of their employer, then that you don't need to have a co-I from STFC to do that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
I mean, overall, one of the things about when we ask about the experience of the individual doing the work, but also, we ask for information about co-Is and PIs, the panel will be looking to see that there's enough support around the technical member of staff to deliver the project. But that doesn't have to be someone specific at STFC, as long as the co-Is around from Manchester are able to provide that support, that would be fine.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Michael, did you have anything specific before we move on to look?
I think so I'm more the person that do the technical work, as you probably know, and the people I work with. I think it's the community thing that's always kind of been it's been questioned. how to prove that the work is necessary or required or supported by the community or current future users of ARCHER2, things like that. I was wondering how best to evidence that, or what degree of scrutiny the panel applies. Does that make sense? I don't want to start naming names and things like that, but
No.
Is it sufficient to say, yeah, we would work with EPCC, etc., to get a module of it so that people could access the executable, or does it have to be all the way to open source code and the CCP has signed up to use it the day that it's all running much faster and things like that?
So I mean, I think one of the basics I would say is that the code is available to ARCHER2 users in some way afterwards. Some codes, some people have struggled with that if the code is in some way commercial and they're going to expect people to pay for it. Although even then, it depends on how much they're going to be expected to pay for. So certainly that the code is, if it's an open source code, if it's going to have availability on Archer for people to use, that's almost that's sort of a basic level. The next stage is really to show that somebody is going to want to use it afterwards, that there is value to the work. So people do that with letters of support from individuals who might use it. And the panel, I have seen them scrutinize them quite closely to see whether they're fairly generic letters of support or whether they're really saying, if we have this functionality, we will use it.
Yeah, I would second that about the letters of support. Really, it's important that these letters are really sort of saying people that actually need this feature or would use this feature, rather than just being sort of generally supportive. That's, I think sometimes people put in letters of support that they say, oh yeah, this is a good idea, but they're not actually from somebody that's saying, we will use this code, we need it, right? So I think the letters of support are very helpful there.
Right. So you're looking more for once developed, we would use program X to do this research or to apply in industry in this way, rather than we think it's good work that this prof is doing.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay. Yeah. You don't need a monetary value and things like that for letters of support like EPSRC, do you?
No,
it's a different kind of thing. It's more about what they will use the end product. Yeah.
I mean, if you've got that, then I would imagine that would be a benefit, but that's not necessary, no.
Okay, so do you want to swap over and put up the form?
Yes. So there's several different parts of the form. So I'll put.
Do you want me to do the technical?
Well, let me put up. Why don't I put up the online form, the Safe Firm first, which is here ready to go. We can just take it from there, and then I've got a few tips and things after that. But maybe if you do the other forms after that. So just take me a second or two to swap over.
Sorry, I may have to. I'm not sure if you can hear that. It's very windy.
It's incredibly windy.
It's incredibly windy. I may have to shut the window. But...
so it's becoming. Okay, so
sorry. Oh, I've lost some video, haven't I? No. I'm going to have to go in about 5 minutes, so rather interrupt you once you get started. You're recording this, aren't you? I just noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
We make it available afterwards.
I
presume.
Yes,
you're not just recording it for training purposes. Your training.
No. Yeah. Well, I mean, what we'll do is we'll take a look at what we've got and see how useful it is. Because obviously, if people have asked questions that are quite specific about their proposal, then we won't put that up. So what we'll have to do is do a little bit of an assessment afterwards as to how useful it will be. But
can I ask one more question, and then I'll probably disappear actually. Yeah. So ARCHER2 is fairly new. My expectation is there would be a whole ranch of people excited to move to AMD and putting stuff into the eCSE stuff previous rounds, are we still at that peak? So we're competing with a lot more people. Are we over that peak where it's perhaps less competitive, for want of a better phrase?
I think it's fair to say we're over that peak. We had a very large number for the first call, but things have settled down since then. So I think now is as good a time as any to try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll be, the people I'm working for will be aiming not for the immediate one, but the one that's in October. Is it the final deadline submission? September, October.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing to say is if you have further questions or want a chat, we're happy to have a Zoom call with you to talk things through. I mean, once it starts into the, once we get to the submission process, it becomes part of the panel assessment, and there's very little we can do. But until you submit, part of our remit is to assess what we can.
Yeah, I think I will take you up on that. Yeah. Cool. So I'm going to look, but I will disappear at some point. So
okay. No, thanks. No, thanks for coming on. So what I'll do then is I'll put up the form here, and I'll just show you basically what it looks like and make a few comments as we go along, and then we can show you the specific the technical evaluation form and the proposal form which you attach to this. But I'll just run through quickly how it all works. So what I've done here is I've already started a proposal, and I've just called it eCSE demo. So obviously, first of all, you have to be signed up to the safe and everything.
we can only see you. We can't see what you're showing us.
Oh,
hang on. Oh, no, hang on. I moved my pictures around. Oh, dear.
That's okay. No, it did take ages for it to appear for some reason.
No, I've got it. I'm just not used to all this remote.
No, don't worry. That's okay.
That's a joke.
It made it for so many windows. So anyway, so the form basically, first of all, if you go in and edit, you can just edit the title. You can select the subject area from the pull down list. I mean, this is all fairly straightforward. At the moment, proposals can only be from the EPCC remit. So you'll just have to select that there and check that you are within the EPCC remit. And there are links in the guidance as to what those remits, what that remit is. And then if you could just provide a short summary of the project. This is quite useful for us when we're just for the panel and things, when we're just looking through the proposals. So just a short summary there. I think it's a 300-word limit there. Then what you can do is also, if you're involved in a consortium, it's very useful for you to let us know that. So you just edit this here and select the consortium. And also just answer some questions on whether this is a resubmission and so on. Most of this is I think, pretty self-explanatory. Then there are a few questions about how to add the team. So here you can add another PI. And what happens when you add new people, whether you add them as a PI, as a contact person, or as a co-I, if you use the email address that person already uses in the safe, then it just invites them. They log on to the safe and they accept. If they're not already in the safe, then the best thing is to find out what email address they would use when they're in the safe, because it will invite them, and as part of the process, it will invite them to join the safe. So it's worth having that conversation with them first. Otherwise, you can end up with sort of orphaned kind of invitations and things. If you do make a mistake with that, then there's no need to delete an invitation. An invitation for a person to join expires after 30 days or something, so it doesn't just stay there forever. But you can add more people. You can make yourself a PI, or make yourself any other role, or you can add new people. And one thing I would say that's important here is to make sure that anybody you do invite, they will need to have accepted the invitation by the time the proposal is finally submitted. Because if they don't, then they won't appear on the proposal. So the reviewers just won't see them. Okay, so you might need to chase those up. Then you can add technical staff. So there's buttons here for doing that. It's you should add the role that person will bring and the time they start. And then you should add their costings, and I've got some slides and things about costings if people are interested, that I can come back to. Now there is some information here about codes to add. We obviously want to know which code you're going to be working on, or which codes. So if you look at this here, basically if you give a description, well, and the name of the code here, and then we ask for the current number of users, and depending on, you want the most up-to-date information here, so preferably ARCHER2, but in some cases you may have to go back a little bit further. We're just looking for a rough number of users, either on ARCHER2 or in the next box worldwide, and then just a bit of a description afterwards as how you came by those figures. It may be that you've gone on to, say, the ARCHER2 website and looked at usage. It may be that the code developers themselves know this, but just describe where your estimate comes from. And one thing I would say here is that we have a whole range of codes that are worked on the eCSE. Some are really big codes that are used by loads and loads of users. Others might be only used by a handful of people. Now the eCSE does support all that range of different codes. Now obviously if you've got a code that is that has a very high usage, then it's quite easy to make a case, or it's easier perhaps to make a case as to why the code would be beneficial. But it's still perfectly possible to make a case if a code is used by few people, as long as it's going to produce, there's a scientific benefit at the end. So you can make a case. So don't feel that this this will only work for big codes. It can work for lesser used codes, but you just need to make the case as to why this is important and to who this will benefit. And also you may be looking to grow the community. So it may be that a code is only used by a handful of people right now, but the part of the project may be to make the code have more appeal and therefore to grow the community. So we do support the whole range, but you will obviously need to make a different case depending on how many users there are. And then we have some questions about how to explain these numbers. And also, it's quite useful for us to know what percentage of the users will benefit from the improvements, because you may have a code which is used by 1,000 people, but it may be that the benefits that will only be to a very small number, or maybe to all of them, right? So just give us an estimate there. And then also, please do give us an explanation of any existing funding for the codes. It's really important to know how this fits in with other work that might be being done on a code and other funding that you have for a code. So do tell us that there. I think the boxes are reasonably straightforward, but as with just about everything here, if you have any questions or you're not sure, do just get in touch. If there's anything you want us to look at, please do just let us know. We can answer questions. Then there are some questions here on the area of work. So we're interested to know here whether this is primarily about performance improvements, or whether it's more about usability and maintainability of software, or whether it's about adding functions or adding functionality to a code. It may be a combination of those, but we do support all those different types. This is not all about just optimization, right? It may be that you're making a code go faster or making it more scalable, but it may be that you're putting something into the code to make it much more usable, or to improve the maintainability or so on. So it's useful for you to let us know that there. You can tell us about any training and support that you may need as part of the project. And then there's a bit here about travel, and I can come back to that if people are interested, with it, because I've got on my slides about costings. Now there are two documents that you need to add to the form. So the first is the technical evaluation document. So what we have for the eCSE are we have two deadlines. We have a first deadline whereby you need to submit your technical review document to us via the ARCHER2 service desk. We then complete the assessment, and when that's done, we will send you back a PDF, and it's that completed PDF which you add to your form here. Okay. And that's really the only bit that's sort of outside of the safe there. You submit via the service desk initially, and then the completed one gets added here, and you can see a box, a button there for adding the technical review document. And then for the proposal document, which we'll look at in a minute, there's another Word template, and you should fill that in, and that has to be added as a PDF for the final submission. So those two documents must be added, okay? Otherwise, you can't submit. Then, as we've already discussed a little bit about letters of support, you can add any number of letters of support here. They are not compulsory. I mean, they can be very useful to describe why somebody will use the code and why somebody needs this. You can submit without them, but I would suggest if you've got people who will benefit, then you get a letter of support from them. And that once you've added those documents, and once you've got a member of technical staff added to the form, another button will appear down here, which allows, well, in fact, it's grayed out here. Submit this application. That will go red, and you will be able to submit it. There's some more detail that I'll probably come back to if we talk about costings with regard to the technical staff. So when you can add a technical staff here. When you do that, you will need to add their costing document, and you will also need to add a CV, and that technical member of staff can add that CV themselves. The only case where you don't need a costing is if the technical staff is from EPCC. You don't have to add a costing because we will just get those internally. There's no point in you asking us for the costing, so we can send it back to you, so you can send it back to us. So you don't need to put EPCC's costing on, and there is a button to allow that. So that is basically the online submission form. So I think now, Lorna, you're happy to talk about the documents that you add here. Is that?
Yep, I will do. Well, I upload that. Maybe you want to.
Yeah,
you want to see if there's any questions?
Yes, yeah, of course. So does anybody have any questions on any of that, or anything related to that, or just anything you'd like to ask now while there's a gap?
Sorry, this is just the chug of
yeah,
changing files over.
It takes a little while for it to load up. So, and one thing I should say is, I mean, don't feel you have to ask questions right now, because you may want a little bit of time to formulate it. But do just send any questions you have at all. Just send them into the service desk. We're always happy to ask, and don't feel feel bad about asking anything, even if it's feels like a quite a even if you think it might be obvious, it may not be. So okay, so I'll hand over to Lorna.
So this is very much just a talk through of the technical evaluation form. It is worth noting that we submit the this technical evaluation has an earlier deadline than the submission of the full proposal. This gives us the time to complete the technical evaluation and return it to you in advance of your submission. If you submit right up to the deadline, we will communicate with you if there are things where we don't understand or we think need further information, but the timescale is quite tight. If you submit it earlier or get in touch and ask questions earlier, we're more than happy to give guidance on what should be in the form, what's missing, where we would suggest you added further information. So it is worth knowing that you don't, if you can avoid leaving it right till the deadline, then you're probably, there's more opportunity to get better feedback. So the technical evaluation is completed by a member of the ARCHER2 CSE team. So that's not completed by the selection panel. It's completed by one of the team who support the ARCHER2 service. It's all very open. You'll see at the bottom of the form, there's section 2, which we complete. And we will complete the form, we'll return it to you, and that same form will go to the panel, and that's what they will see. So the panel will use that as part of their selection process, but before you submit it, you'll know exactly what the feedback from the CSE team is. And again, if you give us enough time, we do tend, rather than present you with a technical evaluation form that says this is missing, we'll come back to you and say, I think this needs further information, or needs, maybe need a bit more of this. Sometimes that's very simple, you can address it. Other times it is perfectly reasonable to say, okay, they're suggesting I do a bit more work here, and wait until the next eCSE submission. And also, if it's about not having enough benchmarking data, we can advise you on how you get access. There are things like the driving test and instant access that allow you to produce data, or you can ask us for help in how you actually generate the data. So I suppose my tip there is, if at all possible, the earlier you submit, the more opportunity we have to give good feedback. So the purpose of the technical evaluation, again, this is, if you look at section 2, this pretty much tells you what the purpose is. So we are looking to ensure that the software you have is suitable for Archer, i.e. that it can scale well, the performance is appropriate for the ARCHER2 service, or that it will be after you've finished, after the eCSE is complete. So that's one of the tests we'll do. And if there's not enough data to demonstrate that, then we will come back to you. The next one is, are there any software dependencies or requirements? This is very much to see whether you can actually do the work if your project was successful. So are there things that aren't there? How difficult are they going to be to install? That kind of idea. This is a comment we touched on earlier. Will the code be available to ARCHER2 users on completion? Are the licensing models suitable? This is very much, partly addresses this question of who will benefit from the software development work after the project is complete. So if what you say is, we're going to complete this work, but we're going to keep it local to the group, and only my research group will be able to see it. There's a question mark there over whether it's really of value to the ARCHER2 service. So, commitment to make it available on Archer afterwards, talking about the sort of licenses it has. Is it an open license? And, are there any licensing restrictions? And the other question is around sustainability. So will the code be maintained after the completion of the eCSE work? It's looking to test that once you've done this, the benefit will still be there in a year or two's time. Is there a process in place to carry out bug fixes and updates? That kind of idea. And you'll see the first section is about giving a description of the code. So this describes what the main codes are, and it addresses very much the question of whether the code can run on ARCHER2. So are there any dependencies that are needed? It may be, just because something isn't on ARCHER2 at the moment, we may come back and say, yes, somebody else has done this already, or let's look to see if we can port it. So it's about getting it out there as to, have you tested it on Archer? Do you know what's needed to move it to the ARCHER2 machine? And any licensing requirements I've covered already. This is a description of what you're actually intending to do, and we're looking to see whether it's realistic. What changes are you planning to make to the code base? How complex is it? And how will the code change at the end? Scaling evidence for the code. So this very much addresses that first objective, which is around, is the code suitable for the ARCHER2 system, either currently or at the end of this eCSE? So we're looking for concrete evidence here about scaling, about performance. So for example, we're looking for a table of runtime against nodes, so that we can really assess that it is appropriate for ARCHER2. Obviously, you know, if you're moving, maybe doing a project that moves from a tier 2 to a tier 1 resource, the evidence can come from the tier 2 system, and really you're just looking to justify why at the end it will be able to make use of ARCHER2. And some of these, you know, some of these questions that you're addressing here, this is very much the technical side of it, but you'll find when you actually do the form, there's more of a description there around the values and what you're going to achieve in the future. So the two are fairly linked. And the last comes to this, the points I made about both sustainability and maintenance of the code. So we're looking for a description of how it will be maintained, who it will be available to, and also any comments on things like coding standards you're using, or any testing or validation requirements. And this was one of the points that, again, one of the objectives, just making sure who's actually able to use it after the work is complete. There are comments about page limits and font sizes. You know, do try and stick to them. They are important, and they're there to try and keep the overhead for both the applicant and the panel down. So we do enforce these. Remember that when you're creating your technical evaluation, we are here to help. As I said to Michael before he left, one of the things, you know, once the forms are submitted, once the application is submitted, you're into a peer-reviewed process, and we certainly can't influence things there. But in advance, you know, we help everybody equally. If you need any support in terms of what data you need to provide, we're happy to help. There's no point in submitting something that doesn't have the right level of data, because, you know, the panel will then not have enough information to assess the proposal. Okay, I think that covers everything I had on that form. Did you have anything to add there, tips and hints? Or?
No, I think maybe I've got one or two tips and hints, maybe perhaps after the proposal document, because it refers to those.
Yeah. Okay, so let me see. Does anybody have any questions while I search out the proposal form?
Hello, can I
Hi.
ask a general question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in general, how competitive are these applications?
Well, I think it's difficult to answer that. I mean, the panel do go through them all very carefully and check that the work is doable, that there's benefit, and that there's a clear technical plan. So I mean, I think they're probably quite competitive in that sense. I mean, in terms of numbers, I would say we've had 45 projects accepted so far, and we've had about 80 something proposals. I can check, but sort of 80 something proposals, I think. So it's I mean, that gives you sort of an idea of the statistics, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're the numbers, really.
I'm struggling to find. Sorry.
Okay. So, thank you very much. That's very helpful. So a second question is, so is the assessment mainly based on the science, or on the technical side of the computation?
So it really looks at both. Yeah, it looks
okay.
at the scientific benefit. So we'll look at the technical feasibility, and whether it's doable, and whether it's going to work, and whether it's properly supported. But it will look at the scientific benefit. So what's the ultimate goal of this? Why is this important? In fact, one of the things I was going to say when I come to my tips really is something that's often missed, is that a proposal will go in and it may be technically very good. It may describe really well why why it's going to make a code go twice as fast or something. But sometimes the applicants then might fail to really say why the code matters. What's the science that's going to come out of this. So you do need both. You need the technical the technical feasibility, the technical case, and the scientific motivation for this. And there's a section for describing the benefits there.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So it's converting over there. Where is it there? Share now. Oh, proposal template. Share now. Okay, so that seems.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a copy of the actual proposal document that you would submit. As you can see, again, there's various notes and limits on page numbers. But if I go over to the first question, oh, okay, so that's just general information about project titles. But if I go to this next one, so the first thing we cover is the objectives and success metrics for the project. These are quite important. The panel do take these quite seriously. We're looking for fairly straightforward objectives, which can also have some kind of quantifiable success metric associated with them. So it might be, for example, that you're going to implement some new piece of functionality into the software, or it might be that you plan to make the code go faster. So maybe and you should put in an estimate as to what percentage you expect the code to improve. So they're as quantifiable as possible. For a project that's going to run for the full maximum 12 months, we'd probably expect around 4 or 5 success metrics or objectives. For a smaller one, you might only expect 1 or 2. These will be used at the end as well to assess the success of the project. So I would spend some time making sure you get these right. It is also worth saying, though, that the panel understand that these are research projects and things don't always go to plan. So if and when you aren't meeting these objectives during if your project's successful, that's not a terrible outcome. You do need to describe what you've done or what the achievements are, and you can always get in touch with us about that. It's actually a good maybe the right point to mention. A tip here is that talking about the risks, we do ask you to talk about risks at some point in the form. That is important. The panel are looking for you to acknowledge that things might go wrong and explain how you would address it. So probably one tip is to make sure you do focus properly on any of the risks associated with the project. Very much the meat of the proposal. This describes an overview of what you're actually going to do, and down to the technical level is exactly what you're going to implement. There is a request for a work plan. I wouldn't underestimate the importance of the work plan. This should show how much time and effort you plan to spend on each part of your proposal, and what this means in terms of when you will deliver on sort of milestones, which are probably associated with objectives. The panel will be looking to see that that's reasonable and feasible, that you've thought about it properly, and that that the time scale that you've put in and the effort you've put in is appropriate. So do take some time to focus on that. Impact and benefits. Now, obviously, these are software development projects, but we're developing them for a reason, and that's about the benefit to the science that's outputted from these codes. So, for example, describing if this new functionality means that you can do new science you couldn't do before, that's really positive. Or if by improving the performance of the code, you're going to be able to do more science for the same, CPU value. That's really positive. So it's about articulating the benefits of the application and the benefits of the improvements you're going to make and how that will impact on the science. Nobody expects you to demonstrate or to have produced this science by the time the eCSE is finished. But again, describing how the code's going to be used and who's going to use it gives some confidence that the changes you're making are of value. So I would emphasize that side of things as well. And that is all of the forms. So, it's not a particularly huge form, and it is fairly limited in the number of in the page limit. So, it's about quality rather than quantity. But it does mean that we have worked quite hard to ensure that the burden of writing these things isn't too high compared with the value of the finance you get back. Okay, so that's the form. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions on the form. No.
I could maybe go on to the tips.
I think
that
sensible.
follows on, I think, quite well from that. So, if you just give me the minute or so to.
Yeah, to find things.
To share. So, oh, hold on, I want to share. Right, so it's just doing its converting. So, do you want to turn your microphone off and I'll turn mine on? No, that's fine. That should work.
Do you want to check everything?
Yeah. Okay. So hold on. I'll just share the. Okay. So it's just coming up. Okay, so this was really the slide I was intending to give at the end, which is why it's titled the way it is. But I'll just move on to the one that's relevant here. So what I would say is that well-written proposals with clear objectives, a clear work plan, clear benefits, a good project team, etc., they stand a good chance of getting funded. So it really is worth having putting money in, having a go, just putting together the best proposal you can, and so we can help early on. The proposals are then reviewed by an independent panel. That panel is independent of EPCC. We do not have anybody from EPCC who makes the decisions. In fact, there's nobody from the University of Edinburgh. That's because we put in proposals as well. So we want everything to be a sort of level playing field as possible. So those proposals are reviewed by the independent panel. If you're not successful, then you do get feedback from the panel and suggestions for any future submission. And that should be addressed as a minimum for any resubmission. But each call is competitive in its own right. So a new proposal will be assessed against all the others from that call. But we do give that feedback, and which I think has been useful to people in the past. Sometimes people have then submitted again and been successful. So I thought it would be useful just to give a few of the sort of reasons that the proposals aren't accepted, and that would hopefully serve as some tips as to things to avoid. So I've just called these some gotchas here. So and some of these we've already kind of mentioned a little bit as we went through the forms. But so one of the things that sometimes happens is that people may put in a proposal which is technically desirable, but it's still missing the wider question of why you would do it. So you might have a clear plan for example, reducing the time taken for a code by some big factor, and technically nobody would argue with why that was whether that was a good idea or not. Clearly, making a code go faster is great, but maybe the proposal misses why does it matter? Who uses the code? What's it for? Why does the code need to go faster? So that sometimes gets missing, because you get writing a proposal, you may get bogged down in all the technical details, which is fine, but then might maybe miss the bigger picture of why invest this money? Why do this? Sometimes the estimate of the technical difficulty can be a bit out. Sometimes we end up with proposals that want to do loads and loads of things, and they're really just too ambitious for the effort requested. Occasionally you do get the other problem as well. People will ask for a lot of effort for something which appears to be very simple, and we can help here. If you've got an idea, we can help talk it through, just to hopefully get a better idea of how much might be needed. And we can also do things like code checks as well, and look through your code to see what state it's in, basically, in terms of how easy it may be to update and improve and so on. Occasionally the other problem is that you may have staffing which is not suitable. You may need somebody with expertise, very specific expertise of a code, or specific expertise in HPC, and maybe that the person put it down on the proposal hasn't got that. One thing I would say is that we're really keen to support people in the early stages of their careers. So we're not looking necessarily for the person doing the work to have years and years of experience. They may be quite early on as a PDRA or as an RSE, or maybe not long finished a PhD. That's fine, but in that case there'll need to be support within the project as a whole, to fill in any gaps. That's all fine, but that team needs to be in place. So sometimes your proposals have fallen down a little bit because it's very clear that a specific the code needs to you need somebody with very specific knowledge of the code, and perhaps that's missing. And also, I mean, the other thing you can consider is if you've got somebody who's got the experience with the code, but perhaps they don't have as much in the way of HPC skills. I mean, it's always possible to ask for somebody from EPCC, from the ARCHER2 CSE team here to be put on the proposal, and we can look into that. Or there are other RSEs, other groups around that can provide that. So that's something to think about. Again, speak to us if you're not sure. We can advise. And one thing that's already mentioned here is that sometimes proposals are missing a suitable analysis of risk. And a key thing that sometimes comes up, for example, is you might have, if you split your project up into work packages, it might be that work package 4, for example, is heavily dependent on work package 3. But what if work package 3 isn't completely successful? Does that mean you just can't do work package 4? Or is there some risk, is there a mitigation strategy here for what happens if things don't go according to plan? And proposals, are a lot better generally when they've considered that, and when you've actually gone through and thought about the different paths that might be taken if things don't go absolutely perfectly according to plan, as sometimes they don't, of course. And also, I guess this is sort of related to the first point. Sometimes, it's not necessarily made clear why a code is important. As I said, if a code has loads and loads of users, then okay, maybe it's a bit easier to say why it's important, although you still need to say what the use case here would be. But if a code is used by fewer people, then you will have to explain, why is this code important, and what will come out, what's the scientific benefit here, what will come out of that. And it's hopefully possible to do that, but you will need to think about that. The other thing that sometimes happens is that people put in their objectives and associated success metrics, but sometimes the success metrics aren't quantified. So you might say things like, these key use cases, we will work. The success metric is that they will all go faster, but actually what you should be saying really here is that they will all go a certain percentage faster, and give that percentage. so that when at the end somebody could judge the success of your objectives against the actual results. And if you've exceeded them, that's great. If you're dead on, that's fine. If you're a bit below, well, maybe you haven't quite hasn't been 100% successful, but at least you can. That's fine, but at least you can judge where that is. So please do make sure that success metrics are actually quantified. And similarly with things like you might say things like the code should pass most of the test cases, but make it clear that you want them to pass all the test cases or these specific ones. Just be as specific and as quantified, have things as quantified as possible there. Also, letters of support, we've already mentioned this, that please do try to make these specific. Okay, it's fine to have a letter of support saying, this is a good project and we support this, but what the panel really want to see here is somebody that's saying they will use this code, or that there's something that they can't do right now that this project would enable. So do try to make these letters of support as specific as possible. And it's probably better to have slightly fewer very specific letters of support than have lots of sort of generally sort of warm and supportive letters. Just make these as specific as possible. And the other thing, please proofread it, or get somebody else to read through it, because I mean the panel, it is quite difficult if the panel read through something and there's bits missing, or there's sentences that don't quite finish, which can happen on occasion. It does make it really hard to read. So I would advise anyone to get a colleague just to have a read through and just to check that it all makes sense and that it's all consistent, because that's very hard to do yourself basically. So please do that. So there were the things that I thought of, having seen a number of panels now. That was, I tried to get it all on one slide there really. So I'll show you the next slide actually. It was the sort of summary of the session, but I'll put it up as even if we go on and do more. But basically just to remind you that the 7th call is open right now, and that technical evaluations are due by the 24th of May, so a fortnight today. So please do get those to the ARCHER2 service desk if you're interested. Or get in touch with any questions before that. And then the final deadline for full proposals with the completed technical evaluation added and all the proposal form and everything filled in is 3 weeks later than that. So that's the 14th of June. And there are details of calls up on the website. Just go to the ARCHER2 website. You'll find eCSE on the menu at the top, and everything's linked in there. We also put together a blog recently, a little article there, which is probably worth having a look at, because it goes through in sort of slightly more informal terms, just what the eCSE program is and some of the projects that we've had and so on. And as I think we've said lots of times now, just do get in touch, right? The ARCHER2 service desk is the best way, because queries will always be answered there. They'll never get forgotten or ignored, because they're all logged. So do ask any questions, whether it's about finances, whether it's about the remit of the program, whether it's about staffing, whether it's about getting somebody you have a question, a technical question, anything at all, or even if it's just about the code that you're going to use, anything at all, just get in touch. Better to ask than not. So do just get in touch. Okay, so that was what I had in terms of tips and things. So I guess the thing right now is, do you have any questions?
No, this is very useful.
In terms of the sort of category of proposal where you're adding feature,
the question really is what, if anybody has anything they'd particularly like us to go through. I mean, I have some slides on costings, if they will be useful. There's also I also have some example projects that and pointers of where you can find further information about previous projects. Anybody have any particular preference?
Yes, if possible, could you go through them?
I just had a question. I don't know if I got put off then, but
maybe.
So Alex is.
can you hear me?
No.
Hello?
So okay, so just if you just give me just a minute, and I'll take a look through what I've got. Okay, so if nobody has any questions, I think probably the best thing is if maybe we finish there. We've had about an hour, because I did have a recent webinar that I did a couple of weeks ago, which I think has most of the information in that I would probably give now. So do please refer to that. You can find it on if you go to the ARCHER2 website, go to the training and go to the past materials, you'll find it right there. And the main thing is, again, just get in touch. And if anybody would like a one-to-one session, because obviously you might not want to discuss your specific project in in an open forum. So if you want a one-to-one chat with either me or Lorna, then we can do that. We're happy to talk through all the different aspects of your project. So, or if you'd like, we can even give talks to your department and things if you want. We can tailor it to what you're interested in. So, if nobody has any further questions, then I suggest we finish now.
Chris,
can you have your hand up? It looked like on your video, it looked like you might have done.
Can you hear me? Hello? It's not working.
You can always put things in the chat if audio isn't working.
Alex has a question. I'm not sure you can hear him or me.
Yeah, I can't hear anybody else. Oh, hold on. Sorry. If you were saying something, could you say it again? It might be that we.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, go on. Sorry, I think it was. We probably both had our speakers up. Sorry.
That's fine. No worries. I asked a question a few minutes ago, but I think no one heard me.
No,
So I was just asking. You mentioned about sort of quantifying success metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So for the category of proposal where you're sort of adding a feature to the code, maybe. Could you describe a little bit about what a good success metric in that category might look like and how you'd have a sort of quantifiable one?
So in that case, I would probably be thinking more in terms of, rather than anything in terms of, sort of performance or so on, would be the any kind of tests that you've got, that it passes, that it clearly passes any sort of test cases that you've got. But actually, even in terms of performance, it may well be that if your code is already performing at a certain level, when you add new features in, you might you wouldn't necessarily want the code to reduce in its performance, although that may be acceptable in some cases because you're getting the new feature in may be more important. But so there could still be a performance one related there. But I would think that in most cases it would probably be about the passing test cases and perhaps still performing at a particular a certain level. That would be the sort of thing that we would probably usually see from that kind of project, rather than my code will go this fast on so many cores kind of thing.
Sure. Okay, thanks for that.
Any other questions from anyone? As I say, sometimes it's easier just to put these things in an email. So do just send them into the support desk, and we will get back to you. Okay. So if not, then what I'll do is I'll close the session now. So I'll just well, what I'll do is actually I'll switch off recording. Just a second. So was there another question? No.
Yes, Chris. I
Yeah,
think you could not hear us, but I was able to hear you before. So you mentioned that you have some slides on the finance and the budget,
Yep.
as well as the successful cases.
Mm-hmm.
Could you
Yeah.
quickly run through them?
Yeah, yes, that's no problem. Yeah, no, certainly. So I will
Thank you
just.
very much.
No, it's okay. No, that's fine. I've got them, so happy to do them. So let me just take a second to share. Add file. Right, just converting. Yep. Okay. So here are the slides I had on basically covering staffing, costings, and travel, which is also sort of related. So there's the usual slide on reusing this material. One thing I should say is if we are keen for the program to be advertised as much as possible. So if you would like any of the slides to pass on or to show in your department or whatever, just let us know and we can get them to you. Okay, so yeah, so one of the things that you'll want to do when you're putting together an eCSE proposal is think about the project team. So people could be named on an eCSE proposal in several different ways. So the first two roles are the key ones really, and that's the PI, and that's the one person, and that's a single person who will lead the project. And then the technical staff, which will be a person or occasionally more than one person who's actually funded to do the technical work on the project. And as a minimum, you need those two people. On occasions, we do have a PI who's also doing the technical work. It may be if somebody's got the technical skills and the availability to do the work, and they've also got managerial skills to run the project. And we do occasionally have somebody filling both those roles. Usually they would be two different people, and you can have more than one technical staff, and I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. Then we do optionally have co-Is. So co-Is are people, and again, you can have any number from 0 up to as many as you want, and they're people who will form part of the team, and they're the people that have the sort of managerial and technical input to assist with running the project. One thing that we would say here is that for co-Is, it's almost a bit like with letters of support. Don't just it's better to have people. Don't just add more for the sake of it. It's better to have co-Is who are actively involved in the project, who will really bring something to the project, rather than just name people because they sort of seem influential. But I'll come on to that again in a minute. There are a couple of other roles that you can have on a project. You can be a contact. That means that you have no specific role within the project, but you will receive any emails that come from the project, and you have access to the form. And also, the default role is that you're just a member of the project, and that means that you just have access to update the proposal, but you don't have any specific role within the actual project. And anyone with any of those roles can start a proposal, can edit a proposal, can ultimately submit it, and can invite other people to join. And now it's important to realize that when it comes to costings, that only technical staff are funded here. So there is no funding available for PIs or co-Is. It funds just the technical staff. And that's between 1 and 12 person months in total. So an eCSE team can have any number of people in a team, but as they do consider the role of each person should be active in the project. Better not to add lots of co-Is for no particularly obvious reason, as I mentioned. We welcome co-Is. I mean, co-Is are important, right? But they should have a specific role. So each eCSE project can have between 1 and 12 person months inclusive of effort in total across all the technical staff. Technical staff can come from lots of different places. So it could be somebody from the research group of the PI. It could be another group from within the institution of the PI. So it may be that the PI, your institution might have an RSE group or something, research software engineer group somewhere else in the university that you may use. That's fine. Or it could be that you use a third-party institution, so an institution that's completely different from the PIs, or it may be that you use somebody from our team, so from the ARCHER2 centralized CSE support team, or it may be that you use a combination. So, some projects, for example, might have somebody within the PI's research group who knows the code really well, but perhaps isn't an absolute expert in HPC, so they might put in a certain number of person months. And then it might be you have, for example, somebody from the ARCHER2 centralized team who put in perhaps, a few months or a month or two on to help with the HPC aspects, or they might be somebody from, say, STFC that does that, and there's various different possibilities there, and there are other groups, of course. So any combination is allowed. Projects typically have 1 to 2 technical staff. We've had 1 to 2 projects that have had 3, so that's just to give you an idea of the number. I mean, it's the most common number is 1 to have 1 technical staff, but it can be shared. That's it just depends on what your project really requires. So costings can seem a bit intimidating the first time you do this, but what we're really keen is you just don't worry about costings, right? We can help here, and we can look at costing documents. Your university, your institution will be used to getting costings for PDRAs, for RSEs. This will be something they do all the time. So if in doubt, speak to your research office, or speak to us, and your institution will be used to doing this. We can help here. We can look at documents just to check that they look correct. So do get in touch. Costings use the FEC model, full economic costing model, which is the standard one used by research councils. Most institutions use this. So if you ask for a costing within your department, they'll straight away know what FEC means. If there is, in some cases, the FEC model is not appropriate. If that's the case, best to get in touch with us just to discuss with us to check how that's going to work. So the costings you put in, they should include direct costs and indirect costs. And UKRI has a useful guide as to what those things are. So if you follow that link there, that has links to the various definitions. And in fact, if you just you can follow the link, but if you just Google direct costs UKRI, you'll find that. That has links to the definitions of what direct and indirect costs are, and explains the principles of FEC. But have a quick look through that. But your institution will be used to this. So costings should include costings should not include any PI or COI costs or any additional costs, and don't include travel in your initial cost, because there's a separate part of the form where you put that in. I'll show you that in just a minute. And supporting documentation must be included. So we do need a PDF of your breakdown of costs, which is the thing that your institution will be very used to providing. Usually that's via something like WorkTribe that your institution uses, or maybe sometimes you'll see a PFACT form. There's various different ways that university provide this, but usually they'll be able to provide a PDF, occasionally a spreadsheet, which will have the costings in them and a breakdown of all the direct costs, the indirect costs, and so on. And as I mentioned before, costings do not need to be provided for ARCHER2 CSE staff or for any unnamed staff. We do. It is possible to put in a proposal with unnamed staff. We recommend you don't do this unless you really have to. And again, just probably best to get in touch with us before so that we know why this is being done, or we can discuss with you. But But if you do use an EPCC member of staff, you don't need to put the costing down because we get these internally. The costings are all provided to the panel, so the panel see all the costings and everything together. So they can see if anything looks odd or if anything looks particularly out there. So we do provide them, but you don't need to provide them in your form. Okay, so what I've done here is I've put together a sort of dummy costing document, just so you can see what the sort of thing that this would look like if you get one from your department. They can be in all different kinds of formats, and sometimes things can be in columns rather than rows, or the other way around, and then they can sometimes provide more detail. You can ignore the ticks and crosses for a minute. That was supposed to be an animation, but it doesn't quite show up when you put it through this presentation. So basically, this is an example for a 12-month project. I've just made up the numbers, which is why it's why this 50,000 things are a nice round numbers. I've just made this up, but this is sort of approximately what a 12-month project might look like. So at the top, it should have the title of the eCSE project and the member of staff that it is costing, and then the dates, and then it should say whether this person is full-time or what percentage they're working on. And so what it will show is it will show the directly incurred costs, which will include the staff costings here. So this number here, 50,000, is probably a salary plus probably includes pension and national insurance contributions and things like that. What we ask here is that you don't include travel on this document. It actually doesn't matter if your department do provide this with your travel costing in. That's fine, because it will be, as long as it's clear that it's in here. If it's explicit, it's not. That's okay, because I can know whether to subtract it off or add it on again afterwards. But you don't. So you certainly don't need to include travel here. You shouldn't really be including equipment costs, because we won't be funding any equipment costs, and there shouldn't really be any other costs here. In terms of the directly allocated, so there should be no investigators costs here, because we don't include PIs or COI costings. There's usually an estates costing. There, I've just made up a number that's probably about what it would be for a 12-month project. And then there will be indirect costings, which is what your university will calculate. And at the end, you should have that will all be added up, so there should be a total, and that will give you the total 100% FEC costing. But let's say your university will put this all together and give you the document that looks a bit like this. Now, the reason I've highlighted some things here with the green tick and the red crosses are just to show you what should go into your proposal form. So what we actually pay here is 80% FEC. That is absolutely standard for research grants. But what you should put into your proposal form is you should enter the 100% total costing. Okay, the form then calculates 80% of that, but you should not enter the 80%. You enter the 100%. So the mistake that people sometimes make is occasionally they could get confused over the 80%, 100% thing. And occasionally what you see is, so that's why I put the little cross next to the 80% costing here on the right, because it's the 100% one you should add. And occasionally people do just put the staff costings in, so the sort of salary costings into the form rather than the total costing. You must put in the total costing so that we know what the 80% FEC is in total, because that's what we would pay. But we can look at that. If you put, one thing I would say is if you put this in as early as possible into your form, then what I usually do is coming up to the submission time, I do take a look through the proposals that are coming in, and I do have a quick look at costings. And so if I spot anything that doesn't look right, I can get in touch. But that's obviously only possible if you put your form in, quite a week or two before the final submission. So that's basically what the costing document should look like. But don't panic about this, okay? Because your university will be so used to doing these and if they have any questions, they're free to get in touch directly as well. So we've had questions come into the ARCHER2 service desk from research office people just asking questions about costing. So we can handle all of that. So travel, you can add travel onto a proposal. So project meetings are an important part of an eCSE project. We would expect the most regular meetings probably online over the last couple of years, I guess. That's certainly been the case. And of course, we've all got more used to doing that now. But the occasional in-person meeting can be useful. So PIs, COIs, or technical staff on the same eCSE project can be funded to meet together for project meetings. This travel should be UK based, so it's only UK travel. So as a guide, what we say is for every 4 person months of effort awarded, we'd expect a single day travel for 1 person. So it's like basically for every 4 person months of effort awarded, you get sort of 1 person day of travel. So as an example of that, so a project with 12 person months awarded, you might have 1 3-day meeting with a single person traveling, or you might have a single day with 3 people traveling. Obviously, other combinations are possible. So you should put in a fully costed travel plan onto the proposal form, and that should include a breakdown of the costs. So, you know, hotels, travel subsistence, and so on, so that we can see what you're asking for. So funding should not, so travel funding should not include any travel to attend workshops or conferences or any visits to users or developers of a code outside of the project. So we're planning to introduce a separate fund to allow travel to be carried out for activities that showcase the outcome of eCSE work. If you're interested in that, you know, for maybe you want to present a conference or something like that, then do just get in touch with the ARCHER2 service desk at the appropriate time, and we can discuss that. So the final comment I just wanted to make about while we're on the subject of costings and finances is that if a project is awarded, is accepted, then the PI will receive an award letter. There's no sort of contract as such. It's just we send you an award letter. This refers to some terms. Those terms it's worth having a look at in advance, getting your research office to look at to check that you're happy with them, because they're not negotiable. They're not. We don't change the text of this per project. They are fixed terms. So please do look at those. And then if the project is accepted and you're happy with the terms, then the payment is made via invoice, so your institution would invoice us. And one thing that's important to note here is that all payments are made to the PI's institution. So the PI invoices us and we pay the PI's institution. So where the technical staff are at a different institution from the PI's institution would receive the money and will need to arrange transfer of funds. That's not been a problem so far. We've had quite a few projects where that's happened, but it's worth just checking that as a PI and as the institution of technical staff, that you're happy with that and that you know that's going to happen in advance, so that you can make any necessary arrangements and so it doesn't come as a surprise later on. So that's what I had on travel, costings, payments, and so on. So does anybody have any questions on any of that?
Thank you, Chris. A quick question. So if I use for the technical staff, if I request the support from your team, from your ARCHER2 CSE support, then on the costing items, perhaps it's just the indirect and the state costs. Am I right?
So if you're requesting a member of our team, then you don't have to worry about costings. You tick a box and you don't need to put the costings in, because what we will do is we will get those costings ourselves, and so we can pass them on to the panel. And one thing I should say is that having just said that all payments are made to the PI's institution and then passed on, that's not the case when the staff are from EPCC, because we can just move the money internally to the right project. So basically, if you are using ARCHER2 CSE staff, i.e. EPCC staff, you do not have to worry about costings. We sort all of that out.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. One thing so what I could do, you mentioned also the example projects. What I can do is I can just show you a little bit on that, and then
yeah, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. That's no problem. Just going to share that. That's taking slightly longer to convert. I suspect that's because it has some pictures in. Okay, so here's a few examples and also some pointers as to where you can find more examples. So it's probably worth just a note of what kinds of work can be done in an eCSE. Here, it's not all about optimization and performance, although your project may be on that. But there are a number of things that you could do in a code. You could be looking at the implementation of algorithmic improvements within an existing code. So you might be wanting to put those in a portable way. You might be looking at more performance. So you might be looking at the scalability of software, so moving it to higher core counts. You may be looking more at perhaps not so much the performance, but looking at enhancing the sustainability, maintainability, or usability of a code. Or you may be looking at putting in improvements to a code that allow new science to be carried out on ARCHER2. Or you may be looking at porting and optimizing a code to run efficiently specifically on ARCHER2. So there may be some feature of the system that you want to make use of there to optimize for. You may be looking at putting in new functionalities to existing codes, or you may be looking at taking a code that presently runs on a tier 2 system or perhaps the local university cluster and moving it up to a level that it can run efficiently on ARCHER2. So the important thing here is that all those kinds of things are possible and fundable by the eCSE. And the one thing that you can't use the eCSE for is for scientific research. And the ultimate goal will be scientific research that will be enabled by the eCSE project, but you can't use the project to actually do that research. We do provide a pot of an allocation of computing time on ARCHER2 to assist with your project, and that's generally enough to do a little bit of benchmarking and to check that your codes work and so on, but it's not there to be actually running codes to do production work. Now, obviously, there can be some areas. So, for example, if you're putting in an existing algorithm that may be new to a code, that's fine, but you wouldn't be using this, for example, to do algorithm research. Now, obviously, if there are any sort of grey areas there, you can discuss that with us. So one thing I should say is that we have several examples here I'll give from ARCHER2, the present system, but the eCSE program here that we've been running for a couple of years on ARCHER2 follows on from the very successful program we had under ARCHER, the previous system. So we had about 6 years worth of projects there, 100 projects. So if you want, the best place to look for examples of the kinds of work that can be done with the eCSE is to actually go probably back to ARCHER. So if you go to the ARCHER website and if you go into the community section and to eCSE, you'll see what I put up here, a snapshot, a screen grab of is the web page there, and that goes through the projects that we had under ARCHER. And if you click on each one, you'll find a link to the main technical report and a summary of what those projects involved. And you can also go back and look at that. People also did webinars as well. So there's lots of material there. Now, on ARCHER2, we've now been running for a couple of years. So we've had a few projects that have now gone through the whole cycle applying for a proposal, putting their proposal in, getting accepted, getting started, running through the whole project, finishing the project, putting in their final report. So I've got a few snapshots of those projects here. I'll just run briefly through them. It just so happens that actually quite a lot of these projects are on from the domain of engineering. That's just the way it's fallen out because of the projects that have finished so far. But we have had a lot of projects also from chemistry and materials, from physics, from the various different aspects of ARCHER2. So this just happens to be a bit engineering heavy here. So the first project I'm going to show you is from the first call. So this was the Paragems project. So this was from a team. In this case, the team was fully from Manchester. So we had a PI from Manchester, a co-I from Manchester, and the technical staff was from Manchester. Not always the case that they're from the same place, but here they happen to be. And this was a project that was awarded 9 person months over 1 calendar year. So it's important to note that if you're working on an eCSE project, you don't have to be working 100% on this. It may be that you have other commitments that you're required, or it may be that you work part-time. So this person was obviously working at, say, 75% across the project. So this was using the Para-FEM code, so finite element code. And what they wanted to do here was to integrate the discrete exterior calculus, the DEC library, into this code. So as part of this project, they developed 5 mini apps and optimized them. And as a result, this now allows for finite element and discrete exterior calculus to be applied within the same framework. So it creates the possibility for coupled simulations. So this project wasn't specifically about performance, but they did measure the performance, and it turns out that there's 80% parallel efficiency on 8,000 cores for a problem with 135 million unknowns. And furthermore, they also note that the trends indicate that this efficiency will be extended to higher core counts. So so it wasn't specifically about performance, but there clearly is still good performance here. So that's an example of one project. Let's have another project using the XCompact 3D code. So this was another project where the team was all in one place. So we had a PI at Imperial, and then we had a co-I who was also technical staff. Technical staff can also be a co-I on a project. That's optional. It's entirely up to you. It's allowed, but it's not compulsory. And this project was awarded 12 person months over a calendar year. So Arash was working on this full time. So XCompact 3D is our high order finite difference suite of flow solvers on a Cartesian mesh. So this code was introducing a new functionalities to the code. So they've implemented a CAD interface to insert complex objects into the computational domain. Now have the possibility to simulate moving objects immersed in a turbulent flow. Now have a fluid structure interaction FSI module to simulate problems where one or more complex solid structure interact and modifies the behavior of its surrounding fluid. And now has an improved free surface solver to simulate 2 fluids with different densities. So for example, air and water. So these functions are now all available in the master branch of XCompact 3D. If you go to the GitHub repository, you can see those. And they also have a paper currently under review to highlight potential of some of these new features. So if you're interested, please do look out for that. So here we had a Firedrake project. So this was had a team from various different places. So we had a PI from Imperial College, and then a technical staff was from Imperial College, but had co-Is at other universities. So we had a co-I at the University of Durham. We also had a couple of other people here from Zurich and Buffalo in the US. They actually joined the project later. They weren't co-Is initially on the project, but they were named on the final report because they joined the project. So this was using Firedrake, a high productivity system for specification and solution of PDEs and finite element. So again, another one that happens to be sort of more or less in the area of sort of engineering. So computation here is fully and transparently parallel once the mesh was loaded, But before the project, FireDrake had previously lacked scalable and flexible I/O checkpointing features, so for message and functions. So the project here put in new checkpointing capabilities in FireDrake using the commonly used HDF5 library. So that allows for saving message and functions at large scale and then loading onto a number of processes appropriate for the phase of the simulation. So being able to restart a simulation on a different number of cores is a very useful thing to be able to do, and that's what this project has enabled. It's not something that's completely straightforward to implement. And the message fusion and time stepping problems are also now treated transparently. So this improved benefits for users who want to pause and resume large-scale time-dependent simulations, or who want to process the simulation later on their workstation. So moving on to a project here that this one isn't engineering, this one's now in materials. So we had a PI here from Warwick, and then we had co-Is in various different places, Durham and York, and then the technical staff here were working at STFC. So an example of a different kind of a project team here, where they're using effectively a third-party RSE here. And this was a project that was 3 months or slightly shorter project, and it was spread over 6 calendar months. So a person was working 50% on this. And the code was the very heavily used CASTEP code. So CASTEP's a density functional theory code. It's a UK flagship code, specialized for solid materials, and heavily used. So we've got 300 to 400 active users on ARCHER2. So computing transition states, reaction rates, exploring free energy barriers with enhanced sampling are important in a wide range of applications, and that was previously poorly supported. So two new features have been implemented to address these issues. So there's now support for the widely used nudged elastic band transition state search tool, and that's augmented by a state-of-the-art robust optimizer. There's now an interface to the PI Universal Force Engine that allows CASTEP to be connected efficiently to a wide range of external codes with enhanced sampling capabilities. So that's quite a few of these projects you'll see are about how to couple with other codes and how to interface with other libraries and so on. So the key beneficiaries are a few of the CCPs, so CCP, NC, and the CCP9 community, as well as the UK Car Parallelo consortium, so the community there. So the new tools will aid in reconciling experimental observations with atomic scale behavior, helping to guide and interpret future experiments. So I'm just taking it, just got a couple more here. I'll just try and show you the range. So another project here, back to engineering, working on FHI aims. So sorry, not engineering. So this one's more physics, I think. This one was a team based mainly in Warwick with a few external PIs, 12 months of effort. So this is the FHI aims code. Main benefit is for this project was the line reduction. So they basically made the code itself more efficient in terms of the actual the way it's written. And done some natural reorganization of the code. So that aids future code development, usability and sustainability of the density functional perturbation theory code. So there's now the creation of a general purpose coupled perturbed self-consistency field. We have lower level routines that share a common purpose, so they've been collated and this should help guide future developers. So the need for some of the DFPT specific routines in general modules has been removed. And the code includes many more appropriate error checks and error messages to guide the user to reduce the chance of erroneous data being produced. So reduces wasted CPU usage. I think we actually have Alex here from this project on the course, so he can tell me if I say the wrong thing here. But this was a project that coupled Code Saturn and the Phoenix codes together. So we have the PI Alex from STFC and a team fully on STFC this time. So 9 months work done over 12 months. So we have fluid structure interaction, FSI, occurs frequently in the field of renewable and low carbon energy production, so require greater computational resources relative to pure fluid dynamics or structure dynamic problems. So the project here developed a new massively parallel partitioned fluid structure interaction simulation framework, PARA-CF. So this relies on massively parallel computational fluid dynamics code, code Saturn, and a computational structure mechanics code, Phoenix. So these codes were coupled together through the interfacing library, MUI. So this project was mainly about, you say, coupling code, which again, coupling two codes, which is something that happens quite a bit in eCSE projects. Okay, so that was a whistle-stop tour of a few of the projects that we've had so far. I thought one or two stats here might be useful just so you get an idea of the makeup of the projects. So we've had 45 projects so far under ARCHER2, 414 person months in total. So the average amount of effort for a project is 9.2 person months. So that gives you an idea of the size. We do have projects that are down at the sort of more like the 3-month level, and we have some that are up at 12 months. But that's the average, just so it gives you an idea. And the average duration is 12 months. So you can see that projects aren't always done at 100% there. So the average, I guess, is about 75%. And the average number of staff members on each project is 1.3. So that shows you that most projects there have 1 member of staff. A few have 2 members and occasionally 3. Oh, so in fact, I've got the numbers there. So 35 projects have 1 technical member of staff, 8 have 2, and we've had 2 that have 3. Just gives you an idea of the makeup of the project. 6 have, so of those 45 projects, 6 have technical staff from more than 1 institution, so it is possible to spread that over. And so 28 projects have PIs and technical staff at the same institution. Meanwhile, 17 have PIs and technical staff at different institutions. So these complications are possible. So these combinations are all possible. So lots of combinations are possible here. Okay, so that was a very, probably a bit intensive, but a run through of the different kinds of projects that we've had. There are lots more, of course, but I do urge you to go back and have a look through. A lot of these will be coming online over the next few weeks and months, and as we get more final reports in, more will appear. But as I said, the ARCHER website is a very good repository of information there, because there's a whole range of projects that we had before, and the remit is broadly the same now. So that's you know, hopefully gives you a flavour for the kinds of work that's done here, and you know, more will appear. So does anybody have any comments or questions on those?
Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
No problem. Okay, so if there's no questions at the moment, then what we can do is finish up here. Give another few seconds in case anybody has anything. I think that's most of the slides and material that we had anyway. But yeah, just get in touch, have any questions, and we look forward to hopefully receiving a proposal at some point from you. I do encourage you to submit if you're interested. You know, and you know, I think it's a good program. Provides, you know, real funding for you know, real salary funding here for people to do, you know, good interesting work. So yeah, I encourage you to apply, and do spread the word as well around your department or others, because there may be people that haven't heard about the program yet. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just switch off the recording.